This video is going to be a little different from our usual videos. Usually we look at a story and break it down from a biblical perspective to show you where it overlaps with the Bible and where it doesn't. Today, I want to talk about the new David movie, but in this case, the movie is a retelling of a biblical story. We could talk about how biblically accurate the movie is, but that doesn't interest me that much. This movie is a musical for kids and families, so it's obviously not a perfect retelling of the biblical story. Instead, I would like to talk about what this movie really means. What does this movie mean to the industry? What are the themes of the story? And what does it mean for us? I think this movie represents something significantly major for the changing movie industry and the future of movies and animation. I think that Disney is ultimately toast. I think that this story teaches important lessons and themes that are excellent for children and families to discuss, and I think that it packages them in a brilliant biblical way for them to wrestle with. First off, let's clarify what I mean when I say that Disney is dead or that Disney is toast. Disney has been around for over 100 years now making entertainment. They are easily the world's Goliath for family entertainment, and it's hard to imagine a world without them. I think we've all pretty much accepted them as a cultural staple that's not going away anytime soon. I truthfully can't even imagine a world without Disney at this point, and I can't really imagine anything ending their business. But I can easily imagine shakeups and changes that will challenge their business forever, and we're living through one right now. When I say that I think Disney is toast or that Disney is dead, I mean that Disney as we've known it will die, and it will one day look very different from what we're used to. But to understand where the company is going, you need to first understand some Disney history. I just recently finished reading a book titled The Ride of a Lifetime by current Disney CEO Bob Iger. Iger has had a whole career of experience in the entertainment industry. Not only has he been the CEO of Disney from 2005 to 2020, but after retiring in 2020, he came back again to be CEO in 2022, and he still is the CEO as of the recording of this video. Prior to Disney, Iger was at ABC since 1974. At ABC, he worked his way up to eventually becoming the president of the ABC Network Television Group. In 1995, Disney had bought ABC, and by 2000, Iger was the president and COO of Disney until he became CEO in 2005. In his book, Iger wrote about how critically important animation has been to Disney. The company was founded by Walt Disney's combination of technologically innovative movie making with unique and artistic animation. Throughout Walt's life, this remained the case, but when Walt died, the company entered a long period of inconsistency and decline. They put out many failed animated movies, and they even pivoted to live-action movies, which didn't perform well either. Disney was desperate, and by 1984, Michael Eisner came in as a new CEO to revitalize the company. He was successful, and the key to his success was by revitalizing Disney animation. Starting with the release of The Little Mermaid in 1989, Disney hit a string of critically acclaimed and commercially successful movies. Throughout the 90s, this era is commonly known today as the Disney Renaissance, because for 10 years, they released these successful movies and it totally changed their business forever. Not only were these movies great, they brought the company a ton of money through not just the ticket sales, but also through merchandise and theme park attractions. We covered 2 of these movies already on the channel, and we'll cover more in the future. I think that part of what made this era so great was that there were some prominent Christians working on the movies at Disney, and they prioritized truly great storytelling. But at the turn of the century, the tides were shifting. Disney may have dominated the 90s, but they weren't the only animation studio around. Pixar had released Toy Story in 1995 and was quickly surpassing and eclipsing Disney creatively. Even DreamWorks came out in 1998 with movies to compete against Disney. So by the early 2000s, Disney was no longer on top. DreamWorks and Pixar were crushing it. And even if you loved the Disney movies that came out during this time, they just weren't as successful at the box office, and they didn't turn into good merchandise or theme park attraction opportunities. They just couldn't beat the success of the 90s movies, and competition was rising. They were failing big time, and it's this failure, among many others across Disney, that ultimately cost Michael Eisner his job. Eisner knew when he took over the company back in 1984 that he had to bring back Disney animation in a big way, and he was successful in doing that. And 20 years later, Bob Iger saw similar problems and he knew what he had to do. He had to revitalize Disney animation as well. But the best way that he saw to do that was through buying Pixar. He knew that if Disney could buy Pixar, they would acquire all their characters, movies, and future sequels. They could adopt Pixar's cutting-edge technology to work on their own Disney animations, and they would acquire Pixar's top talent to be able to use them at Disney as well. This plan worked. Disney saw a tremendous turnaround during Bob Iger's tenure, largely due to the success in acquiring Pixar, and then later Lucasfilms, Marvel, and 21st Century Fox. After all, there's no need for your company to produce better entertainment when you could just buy the companies that are already producing great entertainment. But I think the tides are turning once again, and Disney is facing major disruption that will crush their business if they don't do something about it. For better or for worse, we are now in the era of online streaming services and smaller independent studios making a name for themselves. Too much content is competing for our attention. I am seeing Disney struggling to come out with good movies. Once again, they're focused on making live action movies that people just don't really like or care about, while their animation studio is making sequels that people also don't like or care about. Frozen 2, Frozen 3, Frozen 4, Moana 2, Zootopia 2, and Ralph Breaks the Internet. Even the few original movies that they've been releasing are also movies that are just struggling. Nobody seems to really care about Raya and the Last Dragon, Strange World, or Wish. Pixar is in the same boat, with Incredibles 2, Toy Story 4 and 5, Inside Out 2, Lightyear, Elemental, and Elio. Disney has been trying desperately to turn these new characters into merch and theme park attraction opportunities, but I just don't think that anyone really cares for this new stuff. A lot of people haven't even seen these movies, because we now live in a time where there are better alternatives competing for our attention. Remember when I said that unique artistry and staying on the cutting edge of technological innovation was Walt's key to making the Disney company a success? Not only is that true, but it's exactly how Disney animation dominated the 90s as well, and it's how Pixar rose to prominence. But Disney and Pixar are no longer on the cutting edge of technology, and as I've already demonstrated, they are far from unique artistry and solid storytelling. Like them or hate them, but Universal's Minions have been on top of the world for years now. They've created a successful franchise with these guys, and they're making boatloads of cash from the merchandise and theme park attractions. They also had one of the highest grossing movies in 2023 with the Super Mario movie, and its sequel is coming just around the corner. Sony has been absolutely crushing it with their Spider-Verse movies. These movies have been the epitome of technological innovation and artistry. And this video just wouldn't be complete if I didn't mention the overwhelming success of Sony's other movie, K-Pop Demon Hunters, which was distributed through Netflix. K-Pop Demon Hunters is maybe one of the best animated movies that has come out in a long time. So I feel like if Disney isn't feeling the heat yet, they will be soon. They're not going to be able to compete with all of the new projects coming down the pipeline from so many competitors, and I'm very impressed with how Angel Studios is now stepping in with added pressure. David might not be the best movie that I've ever seen in my life, but it was actually pretty great. It looked amazing. The animation was stellar, and the music was also pretty good. I would put this movie up against any of the newer Disney movies, and it would probably beat them in every regard. One of the most refreshing parts of David's release was that I can tell that they aren't money hungry like Disney. They were giving away 2 free kids tickets with every adult ticket you bought to see the movie. This proved to me that Angel Studios was more interested in the artistry behind their movie and creating a big cultural impact than Disney, who is much more greedy and money hungry. I couldn't imagine Disney ever giving away free tickets to see their movies. I just feel like this David movie is now a key chapter in animation history, and it's marking the beginning of the end of Disney as we know it. They will be forced to pivot in the future if they want to compete with stuff like this. Amazon already sees the writing on the walls. When The Chosen became one of the biggest online streaming series in the world simply through their own self-funding and their own self-distribution, Amazon took notice of that. Not only are they now hosting The Chosen on their platform, but they also started their own biblically based series with The House of David. Then Amazon made a deal with a Christian company called The Wonder Project to add more Christian entertainment to the Amazon platform. Even The Chosen started an animated series for kids. We now live in a time where celebrities across the entertainment industry are converting to Christianity, are more outspoken about their faith than ever before, or they're at least considering the faith. Bible sales are up and church attendance is up. So if Disney wants to keep up, They're going to have to forget about Frozen 4 and Toy Story 5 and put out something like David, which invites families to wrestle with spiritual and religious themes. It doesn't have to be explicit or on the nose either. Some of my favorite movies have a spiritual or religious thematic exploration that isn't explicitly Christian. These movies just invite us to think more deeply about ourselves and our faith, because that's what they're prioritizing instead of greed, box office sales, or social political messaging. When you watch the Disney movies from the 90s, you'll find these themes that force you to think about traditional symbols, archetypes, and ancient storytelling. They may even spur questions about spirituality and religion when you watch them with a close eye. If you don't believe me, check out my Aladdin and Hercules videos to see for yourself. But I don't see this kind of stuff in modern Disney movies. Zootopia, for instance, felt like a political mystery thriller, but the complicated political and social dynamics of that world makes it impossible to actually compare it to ours in any real way. There's no tangible lesson or takeaway from that movie. So even as a purely political movie, it's not applicable to our world. But I might have to save that discussion for another day. The point that I'm trying to make is that Disney is prioritizing politics and greed over traditional storytelling, but it's just not working at all. And it's ultimately going to kill their business. David, however, prioritized solid storytelling, good music, great animation, and relevant themes. I think my key takeaway from the movie was the clear juxtaposition in character between King Saul and David. King Saul starts out as a good king appointed to lead the people of Israel, but with time he becomes hungry for power. It becomes clear that he loves his position a little too much, and he's scared to let it go or to lose it. His pride gets the best of him, and he even has people construct statues in his image. Saul's reign becomes characterized by his selfish ambition and pride, but also his paranoia and fear over losing his throne. He fears losing the throne because of David. Over time, he eventually learns that it's David who was chosen as his successor to lead the people of Israel, and that drives him crazy. To everyone else, David is the obvious choice. He spends the whole movie praising God with joy and gratitude. He's a man after God's heart and expresses pure faith in God. He's also deeply loyal to Saul, and he seeks nothing but reconciliation, mercy, and reunification with anyone he has a conflict with, Saul included. One of the key lessons I took away from this movie is that it's the people who want to lead who shouldn't, and the people who don't want to lead who absolutely should. Unlike Saul, David sees the throne for what it is. It's a burden and great responsibility which comes with higher expectations. It's not something to envy and desire. And that's exactly why nobody else is more fit to rule Israel than David. This movie also features tons of symbolism pointing to Jesus Christ if you know where to look for it. David is a shepherd, and at the beginning of the movie, we see just how dedicated he is to guiding and protecting his sheep at all costs. That is exactly what Jesus does for us. There's a reason why Jesus used shepherding in several of his parables and teachings. And there's a reason why David penned in Psalm 23 that the Lord was his shepherd. That's because shepherding a flock of sheep is symbolic for God guiding his people and protecting them from evil. Even the word pastor comes from the Latin word for shepherd. That's because the pastoral office that your pastor or priest holds at your church is the office of shepherding and guiding the people like sheep. Our pastors and priests guide us in the right direction, and they help us steer clear of the wrong directions. They help protect us from evil and guide us towards God. And side note, that's also why I don't like when people ask me for pastoral guidance in the comment section. Even though I'm teaching and educating using this YouTube channel, I am not your pastor, and I can't shepherd you like that. It's not my responsibility, my role, or my calling, and I've not been ordained to do that. Teaching is not the same thing as shepherding in the way that pastors, priests, Jesus, or David would do. Some other connections I made in this movie was that when David was returning to the city, they laid out palm branches for him because this was an important symbol during this time to recognize the return of their king. Likewise, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem, the people laid out palm branches for him as well because they recognized him as a returning king too. The Bible also tells us that Jesus was one of David's descendants. And towards the end of the movie, when the enemies string up David and have him held captive, it's hard not to see him as a Christ figure who is willing to die for his people. Even when Saul is on the hunt for David, he is going around persecuting his own people. The few remaining people who are loyal to David look almost like the early church who had to hide to avoid Roman persecution. All in all, I think David was a great movie, and its story is every bit as relevant today as it was when the story was first written. Just like the classic Disney movies, this movie is a musical with great music and a story about kings, warriors, giants, and the heroic chosen one. So in many ways, it's just like many of the other stories we've covered on this channel. It provides an excellent opportunity for families to discuss important themes about pride, ego, selfish ambition, selflessness, mercy, kindness, faith, and loyalty. And if you watch it, you'll understand our videos so much more. I've referenced David and his story in several of our videos because I think he's still influencing stories today. From video games like The Legend of Zelda to the music of 21 Pilots. The Bible is just inescapable. And I think Disney ought to recognize that before it's too late. If you like this video, please hit the like button and let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to support more deep dives into the hidden Christian truth and pop culture, consider supporting us on Patreon for as little as $2 a month. Thanks for watching.